Hi, this is Rick Ferguson, rickfergusonmusic.com. I'm preparing to play Messiaen's Quartet for the End of Time. I have performed this piece by far more than any other piece that I have done, at least until this point in my young life. I think this will be my 26th performance of Messiaen's work. For those of you who might not be familiar with Quartet for the End of Time, it really is, I think, one of the truly seminal works of chamber music from the 20th century. Its origins are fairly well known, and there is an incredible wealth of literature, writing, score study, analysis of Messiaen's work. It is scored for piano, clarinet, violin, cello, written while Messiaen was interned in a Nazi concentration camp during the Second World War. He worked as a medic in the French army, and he was captured, and he spent really the majority of the war in that concentration camp. And that experience, as I understand it, really caused him to think very deeply about the nature of time, the nature of existence, and you know, he brought to bear, I think, some of his own abiding interest in religion. He was a very well regarded Catholic theologian. He was an avid ornithologist. As a matter of fact, he might have been the most gifted human being that we have produced as a species thus far in terms of hearing bird song and notating bird song accurately. And so there are several through-going threads through Messiaen's quartet, one of which being birdsong, and birdsong is relegated primarily to the violin and the clarinet. And it's amazing writing for both instruments as they mimic, as Messiaen incorporates birdsong. As far as the piano is concerned, one of the things that Messiaen is doing in a number of movements is working with the idea of repetitive patterns, often cyclical repetitive patterns, to begin to alter musically our perception of the passage of time. Now, he will do this chiefly in two ways, one of which is creating circular patterns of sound, right? So, for instance, at the beginning of the first movement, when the clarinet plays this opening theme, the piano then begins to introduce this idea of a cyclical figure, right? And so it's the simultaneous movement of harmony and rhythm that is really messing with our sense of the passage of musical time. But I think much further beyond that, the passage of you know, how temporal time, how we are perceiving time moving. So this initial figure in the piano really sets the stage and sets the color. He marks it very quiet, and he literally says, I would like the sound to be very enveloped by the pedal, by the right pedal in particular. So it is the creation of this sort of floating motion and somewhat heavenly scenarios sonically that begin to provide that. Another way that he creates patterns, because he was very interested in Eastern Indian music, and so loved to explore like Hindu ragas and other aspects of Eastern Indian music, and he incorporates some of that into this. So, for instance, in the sixth movement, where he has sort of the trumpets announcing like this dance of craziness, basically, the primary pattern is this, and all of the instruments are playing this in unison to begin with. So that is then developed, and that specific cyclical theme continues to resurface throughout the movement. One, by design, does not really have always a very clear sense of where downbeats are located, right? And so Messiaen creates lots of ways of really affecting our, as I said, our sense of passage of time. Another way that he does that in the piano is simply by the use of repeated sound, of repeated chords. So, for instance, in the fifth movement, where there's this gorgeous cello solo, the background is the piano just simply. And as this goes on for several minutes, you know, of course, there are changes of harmony, but the harmonic rhythm is very slow. Not just, and these are marked as 16th notes. And he marks them at approximately, I'm going faster, he marks them at approximately 44 for the 16th. So he wants to extend the length between these 16th notes. Basically, from my perspective as a player, really erasing our sense of having any agenda, and this gorgeous cello melody is singing above that, and it's really quite angelic, I would say. So I am constantly fascinated by this work. I'm fascinated at how Messiaen was in that particular circumstance, you know, being housed in a Nazi concentration camp. He was able to think beyond his experience, to use that experience, but then to think beyond it, and really to create. I've never been a part of or played a more hopeful piece of music. And I think ultimately a transcendent piece of music. And as I said, there is a wealth of information about the Quartet for the End of Time. But, you know, as a pianist who really has connected very deeply with this work, you know, I have to say that, you know, it's always such a joy to come back to it. I usually play it at least once a year. And I'm looking forward to meeting, you know, further with my colleagues and preparing it. We have an upcoming performance actually this coming weekend. So I'm really looking forward to that. All the details are in my newsletter on my website, and do visit my YouTube page as well. But, you know, I strongly recommend that you learn about this piece. It's a truly important piece of art, and it's a real personal testament to overcoming, you know, difficulties and you know, using a musical vehicle to transcend those difficulties. So Messiaen, Olivier Messiaen, Quartet for the End of Time. Do spend some time with this piece. You'll be very happy that you did. All right, cheers.